Well, good evening and welcome to PJ Net Live, where we have established contact with the with the traveling Michelle Medlock Adams, and Michelle took a little bit of time out of an extremely busy schedule to share with me. Well, what are we going to talk about tonight? Yeah.
Yeah.
and then she had one of those inspirations. Actually, we have kind of gone over some things. First, Michelle, before we get started, I want to thank you and everybody involved in the North Carolina Christian Writers Conference. I am still blown away. I am still processing what happened there. And I just thank you for your hospitality and generosity and your part in that. And I'm very moved, and we have only gotten started. But thank you so much for that.
Well, we were thrilled to have you and your daughter with us. I heard nothing but positive feedback from all the conferees and from the faculty. It just worked great. It was like it was always meant to be that way. So thank you for being a blessing to all of us.
Well, I can't think of a more fun way to minister to others, to
Yeah.
advance the kingdom, and everybody there, I think, had that agenda.
Yes.
We talked, we emailed each other, and we briefly talked about inspirational moments. And last night,
Yeah.
Dell and I were talking. This was kind of one of those life changing moments for me, but I don't think that's what you were talking about. Have you had inspirational moments, and share that with us? I think we all have. Share with us some of your divinely inspired moments.
Well, there have been some in my life, and I think it's always encouraging to hear other people's testimonies. That's why we have testimony services in churches. There's been a couple of those moments where in my life where it was the hand of God, like whether it's an angelic encounter or just God using somebody for His purposes. At that moment, you know that God was completely directing that person's path to encounter yours. And so, the one I was going to share, I have a couple, but one that really stands out that I actually ended up writing about in mine and Bethany Jett, who, you got to really
Yeah,
get up close and personal, like listen
if you
weekend in
ever
North
meet her,
Carolina.
you don't have to be reminded who she is.
Yeah, she's hilarious. Well, she's my co-author in Platinum Faith, and in one of the chapters, I actually wrote about this story. It was when I was pregnant with my daughter Allison, and I wasn't showing yet because it was just the first trimester. I was about between 10 and 11 weeks along, and I still taught aerobics at the YMCA. I continue to teach fitness, but I was teaching aerobics at the YMCA. And after this low impact class, I started bleeding, which was very scary. And I realized that there was something really really wrong. So my the Y in Bloomington, Indiana, wasn't that far from where I went to the doctor for the baby doctor. So I called over, and they said yes, come right over. And I went in and saw one of the experts there, and actually the visit was so upsetting that I remember the doctor's exact words. They examined me, and he said, well, he said, this happens sometimes. He said, we don't really, there's no explanation for it. You're very healthy. The baby was fine at your first appointment, but it appears that you're going to be miscarrying this child. So there's not really a whole lot we can do for you at this point. You just need to go home and put your feet up. And should you pass, any large clots, you're going to need to go to the emergency room, probably for a DNC. But make sure that you call us if you end up going to the emergency room, and then we'll want to follow up with you on next week. And it was kind of just, not that he was being insensitive, but it was just so matter of fact, like he was telling me to go, brush my teeth or something. It was just very common, just very ordinary. And I remember leaving the office and just numb. That was before cell phones, and I couldn't even call Jeff. And I was driving home, and I remember just praying the whole way, like, God, is this really it? Is this what's going to happen? Is there nothing I can do? And then I felt so guilty. I thought, well, maybe it's because I was teaching aerobics, and maybe I pushed it too hard. All that, those feelings of guilt. And so I went home and did exactly what he said to do. I put my feet up, and of course Jeff came home, and it was getting close to dinner time, and my parents lived next door to us, and they came over, and everybody prayed for me. But my sister, who is kind of the spiritual leader of our house, of our family, since my parents are both in heaven, she's always been kind of a spitfire of faith, is what I call her. She's just she's a pastor's wife, and she sort of just you can't. Here's the thing about Marty: you don't tell her no ever. Like, she doesn't understand no. She doesn't take no for an answer, especially from her kid sister. So she came over and she goes, hey, Mom told me what the doctor said. I want you to get up and get dressed. We're going to go to a revival service tonight. And I said, hello, if Mom told you that what the doctor said, I have to stay laying down with my feet up. Like, I can't get up and get dressed and go to this service. And like I said, Marty doesn't take no for an answer. She goes, well, here's the thing. You can do what the doctor said, or you can do what I believe God's telling us to do. And you can get up and get dressed and go to the revival service. And she just stood there waiting for me to get dressed. I looked at Jeff and I said, we can't win this. So I just did. I thought I'd rather not argue with her. So I just got up and got dressed. We went to this revival service late because it had already started when we got there. So already I'm embarrassed because we're going to some revival service in downtown Bedford, Indiana. I'd never been to this church before. I didn't know this traveling evangelist, and I was kind of mad at my sister. So, we come in late, and as we walk in and kind of sneak in the back, this place is packed. The evangelist in the front stops the service and says, I've been waiting for you. And just draws attention to us. I wanted to crawl under a pew and die. I was so embarrassed. And so I'm looking at Jeff, and he's like, great. So we sit down in the very, very, very back row. And I don't know what the evangelist was saying, but I remember in the middle of his sermon, he stopped and he said, somebody here was told today that you're going to miscarry your baby.
Oh, no.
His exact words, Mark. And he said, and I want you to come up here and I want to pray for you. And here's me, I guess I really am blonde. I said to Jeff, oh my gosh, somebody else got the same report that I got. I wonder who it is. Now, is that the most pitiful thing you've ever heard? I just couldn't fathom that could possibly be for me. And oddly enough, a woman on the other side of the sanctuary stood up. And so he said to her, ma'am, that you're not the one that God showed me, but I will definitely pray for you. And then he said again, if you don't come up here, I'm going to come and get you and bring you up front.
Uh-oh.
And at that point, Jeff goes, I think he's talking to you. And I said, I know, but I can't move. I was just so in awe of this. And so he did. He walked right from the front of the church all the way to the back row, grabbed my hand, and I felt like I floated down front. I don't even know how I got there. Got to the front of the church. And here's the thing. I wasn't showing, so he couldn't have known I was pregnant. God had to have told him. And then he prays for me, and he points at my belly, and he says, I'm here to tell you right now that that's a lie from the pit of hell. Your daughter shall live and not die and declare the works of the Lord in Jesus' name. And, we didn't know we were having a girl because it was too early to tell the sex, but he said daughter. And he said, and then he laid hands on my head. And all I can tell you is I was raised Free Methodist. Now, nobody's doing this at the Free Methodist Church. We prayed, but nobody would fall down under the Spirit. That wasn't something we did. I mean, I did not believe in it. I just had never experienced it. And next thing I know, I'm on the floor. It was just one of those things. And I can tell you, if it hadn't happened to me, I don't know that I would have believed it. It was so unbelievable. And yet, as I was laying there on the floor, I just remember thinking, God's working on me right now. My baby's going to be okay. Like, I knew what was going on was God's healing power. That's the only way I can explain it to you. And in about 30 minutes, it's like the Lord was done. And I just kind of sat up. And I sat up in a chair that they had for me there and waited till the service was over. And I knew when I left there that I was going to be okay and that my daughter was going to live and not die and declare the works of the Lord. And when I went back to the doctor that following day, I didn't wait till next week. Are you kidding me? I'm like, I'm driving up tomorrow. I went up the following day and they found the heartbeat and it was as strong as it had ever been. The bleeding ceased that moment that he prayed for me. And my little girl that he prayed for that should live and not die and declare the works of the Lord is 25 years old. And tomorrow she turns 26. It's her birthday. What a great time to share this testimony that my daughter that was saved from death. I mean, I was going to miscarry her until God's healing power took over. And that happened 26 years ago. She was born tomorrow. So I can't tell you any more miraculous thing that happened in my life than that. That was one of those moments. And it changed the course of our entire family's faith. Like, my mom and dad were there. All of us were there for that service. And my dad leaned over to my mom and said, I can tell you one thing. What's going on down front is real because Missy, which is my nickname, he said, Missy's way too proud to fall down in front of a bunch of people like that. He said, I know that that's the hand of God. So even our entire family's faith was encouraged from that. And little Allison is a mighty woman of God. And anytime she's had any kind of trouble in her life, I've always said to her, the Lord God saved your life and he has a purpose for you. So I want you to walk forward in that and serve him because if it were not for the grace of God, you wouldn't be here. I'll tell you what, that'll preach. So
it just did.
Right? Amazing time in my life. Amazing for all of us. I'm just so grateful even today as I tell it. I'm so grateful even once again that God did that for us.
Michelle, I don't have anything that can even come close to that.
Well, I mean, every act of God is amazing, small or big, but that was one of those life altering things that I just can never, even when I tell it to you, it still seems unreal. Had it not happened to me, I don't even know if I believe it. But I tell you, everything I told you is exactly true. And when I went back up to see the doctor, he just shook his head because he had no explanation. And I told him, I'm like, I went to church last night. This man prayed for me. I mean, you can't deny the power of God. And he said, well, whatever it is, it worked. And it absolutely did. So it was pretty amazing.
I have kind of a miracle healing of sorts. When I was 48, I was actually having lunch with one of the staff members of the Florida Baptist Association, and she's really like my little sister. She knows me so well because I've worked in disaster relief, and she and I kind of handled everything. Because the big executive pastor types, they wear suits. They don't slop around in the mud too much. But I forget the occasion. But we were just having lunch, and she was noticing some things, and she said, "Mark, you need to see a doctor," because while during that lunch, I had drank about a gallon of tea and been to the restroom twice and was sweating.
Wow.
And I said, "Well, why?" She says, "You're diabetic."
Wow.
I said, "What makes you think that?" She says, "Mark, Well, I set up an appointment with the doctor, and the nurse was trying to take my blood pressure and kept thinking the machine was wrong or something, And she was just this big black woman, just like Aunt Jemima. You remember that?
Yes, yeah.
And I said, "Well, how good is it?" And she looked at me and said, "Sir, you are in bad shape." I said, "I feel fine."
Wow.
She said, "Sir, you have felt bad so long you don't know what fine is." Well, the doctor came in. My blood sugar was in orbit. It was in the stratosphere. And my heart rate I was just in pitiful shape. I weighed 266 pounds. And the doctor told me that I would die within 2 years if I didn't make some serious changes.
Oh my goodness.
And he gave me a bunch of prescriptions, and I said, "Doctor, with all due respect, you are not the final authority on this matter, and I will take this prescription long enough to prove you wrong, but my goal is to get off these meds." I went down to what you call the YMCA. They call that the Y now.
Yeah.
And that's a sad testimony, too, because they have secularized that once fine Christian ministry. Anyway, and I actually became a personal trainer because it's cheaper than hiring one. I ran 14 miles a day. I got in shape, folks. I got in shape. I lost 95 pounds in 90 days.
Wow.
And
goodness.
Went back to that doctor. And he said, "There is no cure for diabetes, but you have absolutely no symptoms." In fact, I had to go back in the interim because I was passing out. My blood pressure was going down, and I was being medicated. And he kept reducing the prescription and reducing it until he eventually took me off the meds. And he says, "There is no cure for diabetes, but you have no symptoms." He says, "So let's do some blood work." Well, they did the blood work, and I am apparently cured. Now, that doesn't mean that and so I went ahead and gained about 45 pounds. But I really he was not a believer. He was a doctor. But they were all shaking their heads, saying, "How could this be?" Because you just don't, once you have that. But I don't think I'm cured. I still see some like I have. If I get an injury, it takes forever just a paper cut. Take a week to heal, where before it did. Anyway, so that's as close. That one doesn't even come close to yours.
Listen, that's awesome, and it's cool that you had that God really helped you to be able to lose that weight, and you not only got the message, but then you did something with it. You went forward and became healthy, and that's amazing.
Listen, ladies, if you want a man to do something, I'll give you a hint. tell him he can't.
That's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
That also works with me. Yeah. So.
Yeah, you've got some alpha male
in
there. Yeah, a little bit in there, you know. Now, I was thinking about this, and I guess many of us have some kind of encounter that we could share, but not all. But I did want to share there's some encounters that are providentially or divinely inspired. That, you know, we're looking for that poof magic moment, you know, that magical, just sudden transformation. But I know that there's a woman in my life. I assume she's still living. But if you met Wita Ayler, you would say that here is a woman who's got it made. She is the happiest person on this planet. Well, her husband and my father and a couple of other men played golf every Saturday mornings, and his name was Sonny Anderson. Now, you'll notice her name was Wita Ayler. Back then it was Wita Anderson. One day, Sonny Anderson just went missing. Just went missing. No one knew.
Oh, my.
Yeah. He was not at church that Sunday. He was not at work the next day. He was nowhere to be found. He had run off with a girl half his age.
Oh, no.
Yes. Devastating. Well, it turns out, well, okay, so then, not long, we're in a Wednesday night church service, and someone comes in from the back and interrupts the pastor and says there's been a horrible, horrible car accident. It was her daughter.
Oh, my gosh.
Who to this day is a quadriplegic. She is a vegetable. She cannot move. But she has been caring for her daughter all these years. Well, a man came into her life, Don Ayler, who also worked for the same company my father did. Well, and they later got married. Now, Don was a alpha male. He did things like drag racing and, he canoeing. And he was out in the wilderness canoeing. Had a heart attack all by himself in the wilderness. He was overdue. It took all day for a search party to find him. He was dead.
Oh my gosh.
It goes on and on. Well, and Wita and my mother were good friends. I mean, it's a small town. We all know each other.
Mm-hmm.
But something happened in my life, and I won't go into my personal pain here, but I called up Wita, and I said, Wita, whatever you've got, I need some of it right now. Mm-hmm. And she said, come on over for some coffee, Mark. And
wow.
She ministered to me and gave me some things that I had never heard of Tony Evans at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And she gave me a cassette tape. That tells you how old we are.
Yeah.
And it was a sermon series that he did. And to this day, I give that as a gift to people who I feel could use an uplift in their life. I later took an Alaskan cruise with Dr. Evans. And
wow.
I guess my point is one, some of the divine inspirations may happen by developing relationships and just being there for people over a long period of time. How many times have you recalled things in your past? I certainly have. I share them often on this show. I hate to share them again, but there's things that happened to me 45 years ago on the football field that changed my life forever. I'll be brief with one of them. We only had 11 players. That means we looked to the sideline. So if we saw 3 on the sideline, we knew there was 11 on the field. We had 14 players. I'm sorry, and so we had to rotate in and out because we were playing teams. Anyway, I'm on the sideline, and my coach approaches me, and he puts his fingers in your face mask. Grabs you by the face mask. And says, Prasic, can you do Frank's job? Well, I was a senior. So, first of all, you got to understand, once the coach has you in his crosshairs and asks you a question, there is no correct answer. Anything you say is wrong. Okay. But I was a senior, and I stood up to him, and I bowed up, and I took his hand off my face mask and says, I looked him right in the eye and said, Coach, I'll give it everything I've got. And he said something he never says unless he's really angry. We stood on the sideline. You don't sit on a bench on our team. He said, see that bench? Go sit on it. Frank's trying. I need somebody to get the job done. You know, we think highly of effort, applying effort.
Right.
We praise that. But that taught me something I'll never forget, because at the end of the day, here on this earth, you will be evaluated by the results you get, not how hard you tried. Now, trying hard usually precedes succeeding. Okay?
Right.
But trying
right.
hard in and by itself isn't enough. You've got to, and these principles have guided my life that I learned, and you sometimes wonder, God obviously speaks to us in His written word. That's where we start.
Yes, that's right.
But He also speaks to us through relationships with other people. Make sure
Absolutely.
you're hanging around the right people.
That's right, and that you're listening to the right things. I mean, I've tried to fill myself with inspirational podcasts, and when I'm at home, I've got TBN on, the Trinity Broadcasting Network usually, and I've got preaching going on all the time. I'm in and out of there, and I'm not always listening, but when I'm in there, once in a while, something will catch me, and I'll think, oh, that was good. I needed that today. It's funny. I read the same devotional book every year, plus I always add a new one. And I mean, I've read it probably 15 or 18 years now. I could almost recite it, but it's crazy that every year, the day I read something, it's new, because that's the day I needed it. I may not have needed it on that day last year, but this year on this day, I needed it. So it reads like a new devotional. God always knows. And I write devotionals for a lot of people, a lot of different companies, and I'll have people come up and say to me at conferences sometimes, oh my goodness, it was like you'd read my mail that day. Like, how'd you know? And I said, I didn't. God did. I didn't know anything. I just was writing a devotion. But God, you're exactly right. God will use any way He has to, any by any means, just to get you, just to let you know that He loves you, that He's there for you, that He has a good plan for you. He'll use other Christians. He'll use people who aren't even Christians to encourage you, and that's when you're really like, well, that's got to be God, because that person never is nice. Like, you just know, right? But and another thing I'll share that happened to me. It's another health thing, but this is one of those things that, again, I'm coming up on my anniversary of being cancer free in October. But my daughter Abby, when she was a teenager, she went to the dermatologist. She and Allison both did, for some acne issues, and so it took in our area, Mark. There's only like 2 games in town, and to get an appointment, like, it's 6-month wait. So you don't miss your appointment. If you miss that appointment, you got to wait another 6 months, and like that's a bad thing. So Abby had an appointment in Bloomington with this dermatology practice, and Jeff was supposed to take her because I had taken her the last time, and I had another thing scheduled that evening. So when I get back, we just gone to the track running, and I'm in my shorts. The only time I ever wear shorts is if I'm out running, exercising. It's not like I wear shorts anymore. It's just not my favorite part of my body, or not my leg. So I was in my shorts, and I just come in from the track. I was all sweaty, and I walked through his office, and I said, "Why aren't you in the car? You and Abby Abby has an appointment in Bloomington." He goes, "Oh, I've got a client coming in. I can't take her." I was like, "What do you mean you can't take her? It's your job to take her. We're doing over this. Like, I took her last time. I have an appointment tonight. Hi, I have a life too." And he's like, "I don't know what to tell you. I've got an appointment coming in." I was livid. I'm like, "Are you kidding me right now? Are we supposed to be a team?" Anyway, I get Abby in the car, no time to change, drive up to 100 miles an hour, get in there. I mean, we made it just in time, signed in. We're like 2 minutes late. We walk in, they take us right back to the appointment where you wait in a room for the doctor to come in. And so I'm stretching, because I didn't have time to stretch or anything. I was all cramping up because I've been running. And so I'm over in the side of the room stretching when the doctor comes in, and he comes in to see Abby. And I knew him, but I wasn't, I'd seen him before for like minor things. But he said, "I don't like the looks of that." And he's looking at the back of my leg. And I said, "Listen, I am working on that. I am out there running every day." I thought he was talking about the cellulite, and he was talking about some mole back there. And I'm like, and he goes, "Not that." He said, there's a big mark on the back of your leg." I'm like, "Oh, I think that's a birthmark." And he said, I don't believe that's a birthmark. He said, "I think we need to biopsy that." And so he just got rid of Abby. It's just like, your mother has taken over your appointment, and biopsied it that afternoon. So completely hijacked Abby's appointment. And he said, "I'm going to send it off." And I was like, what just happened here? Like, this was Abby's appointment, and I'm walking out with a bandage on the back of my leg. And do you know that that was melanoma? And I would never have gone in. I mean, it's not a place I'd often look, was right back there in the, but where your hind end meets your leg, that's not a place women look very often. But that's where it was. And so it was, and I'd been out in the sun a lot as a cheerleader in high school and college. I'd gone to a lot of tanning booths in the day. They didn't tell you how bad they were for you back then. And so I'm not surprised I had it, but that took me by surprise. But I often think, boy, if Dr. Reek hadn't insisted on biopsying it that day, I don't know that I'd be here now, because I would never have gone in until probably it was too late. And so those were those things where you're like, man, I mean, all the things I had to line up for that to happen. I mean, Jeff had to have an appointment come in. I had to act ugly and say, well, fine, let's go anyway. Wearing my shorts. I mean, I wouldn't have ever been in shorts if I'd been scheduled to take her. I'd have been dressed nice. So, I mean, you just think back. God always has things lined up. And when we look back, even if it's not a big dramatic thing like the ones we've shared tonight, there are daily things. We have no idea how many things we're protected from every day, or the divine interventions, the people the connections that we make that we don't know till years later end up being a huge thing in our lives. At the time, we just thought it was a new friend or somebody that we were helping just to be nice, and that person ends up having this monumental effect on your career or something. It's so cool to look at that. I call those little kisses from heaven throughout our lives. That I mean, I could name 50 of them. It's just so cool, and I think it's important when we see those just to say, Father God, my goodness, thank you so much. I recognize what you did for me.
Michelle, I once had a pimple on my butt, and the doctor thought it was a brain tumor.
You are something else.
Okay. Michelle, in wrapping it up, you are so busy. Can you just tell, your life is like being in a blender. Tell us what you're doing, what you were, I mean, just catch us up, and then we got to go. But yeah.
Well, this week I have, after I left the North Carolina Christian Writers Conference.
That would have been like Sunday, right?
Like Sunday.
Yeah.
I rode with a friend. Did you meet Cecil and Boone Stokes that were there?
Oh, yes. And, yeah. Yes, that's the short answer.
So
we'll go with that.
Wonderful. Well, Cecil and I we write together some children's books. We've partnered on several things. We have one called "You Are My Dream Come True." That's actually about his story with his son Boone. He adopted
obviously they're
him.
very close. Yeah,
they are precious. So Cecil said before I went down there, he's like, hey, well, you have a couple of days between North Carolina Christian Writers Conference and the North Georgia Christian Writers Conference. I'm like, yeah, there's like 4 days in between. He's like, well, rather than flying home and flying back, why don't you stay in the area and then we can write together for 4 days? I went, oh, that's a great idea. And Jeff said, I think that's a great idea too. So I've been staying here. We've been working every day for the past 4 days. And we've done a lot of playing too. Like tonight I took Boone to Barnes & Noble and we got some books. And 2 of my books were in there. So I took selfies by the books. It was really fun. Yeah. I know, right? And then, so then tomorrow I've got a lady picking me up and we're driving me to Toccoa, Georgia, where I'll be teaching Thursday, Friday, Saturday, fly home Sunday to Indiana to see my adorable husband. So that's it. And then we're helping our daughter move. So my life is insane. It's a good insane, but it's insane.
I kind of knew that there was a really strong bond between Cecil Stokes and his son Boone.
Yes.
I didn't know the backstory.
Yep, it's really cool.
And I'm going through the business cards. Mm-hmm. And that says Boone and Me.
Yes. It also says that on his license plate.
BooneandMe.org.
Yes.
And what... I didn't have a lot of time to talk to him. I should have. At first, he's kind of standoffish. He's hanging around in the kitchen cafeteria area, the fellowship hall. Mm-hmm. He didn't mingle a lot, and I thought he must be highfalutin or something, unapproachable type. No. It turns out he filmed some stuff right here in Thomasville, Georgia, right up the road. And anyway, interesting guy. And folks, I guess I'll wrap it up by saying some of these divinely inspired events might be the people you meet at a conference such as the North Carolina Christian Writers Conference. I mean, I'm seldom at a loss for words. and I'm trying to find the right phrase or something that would capture the spiritual strengthening and encouragement. And Well, you just got to go, folks. It's sort of like being on a mission trip.
Yes.
You know, once you go on a mission trip, you're never the same. You
That's
know,
right.
once you go on, and I'm the last person you would expect to find at a writer's conference. I don't write. Heck, I don't read much.
You know, that's what you told us.
And folks, you fit right in. I don't understand it. Great people. Well, Michelle, enjoy your frantic whatever life. You know, I hope you can make a little time for us again next week.
Yes.
And do
I
that.
don't know what state I'll be in, but I'll be glad to join you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being so faithful, because you are busy, and to set aside some time as faithfully as you have to share with us, it is very uplifting to all of us, and we appreciate you, Michelle. And
Well, thank you.
thank you for being a part of the PJNet Live team, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Me either.
Michelle Medlock Adams. Let me put her website up here on screen. We put a beach scene up there for some reason. I thought it was kind of feminine, maybe. I don't know. But she is here every Wednesday night, unless providentially hindered. And even if she's not here, she gets some really great stand-ins like Bethany Jett and others. And she's published a lot of books. Go check out her website. Connect with her on Facebook and on Twitter, because you won't find a more dynamic, what's the word I'm looking for the Lord, for the kingdom. And she can be like an octopus on roller skates, though. But it's all fun. Well, folks, we're going to wrap it up for now. We will have a special guest tomorrow night who is in our chat room, Lori Metzger, who I met at the, guess what? North Carolina Christian Writers Conference, and she has a story to tell, and you won't want to miss it. So until then, it's right here on PJNet Live.